you're not that bullish on the animals. And I think the reason why you're not so bullish on the animals is because once you get to the further point, yeah, it's cute, blah, blah, blah. People buy, pop, 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 pop. But then there's not enough deeper meaning to make it a religious thing that's stable. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And one of my theories is that we are going to see a gradual transition from animals to non-animals. And the reason for that is because a lot of the non-animal stuff, for example, like Giga and SPX are my top two biggest positions. To me, personally, as well as what I'm seeing in their respective communities, they inspire people and they motivate people much more than just funny animal pictures. The funny animal pictures, they are an echo of Doge and SHIB from last cycle, right? This is a more of a 50 to 100 IQ play where people are like, okay, like dogs worked last time, let's create dogs again, or let's create cats. But the ones I'm promoting, they're trying to be something like next stage, like the future, right? And you always want to be skating where the puck is going.
Welcome, everybody. Episode 64 of Steady Lads. I am particularly excited to have Murad with us today. Everyone who's on crypto Twitter has probably realized that we have a new overlord, a new main character. I think I've heard a lot of names, Murad. I've heard you're the Michael Saylor of memes. I've heard you're the Memecoin Jesus, which seems appropriate as well. Are you kind of like comfortable with like being the main character? There's always the saying of like, try to avoid it, but how do you feel?
Yeah, so the recent inflow of sort of attention, followers, etc., is definitely bigger than what I expected like 8 to 12 weeks ago. Nevertheless, I'm just doing my best and encouraging all my friends as well to kind of remain stoic and remain patient and humble because I think unnecessary euphoria or unnecessary celebrations, there's just way too early for that. In my personal opinion, I'm leaning towards sort of this bull market and specifically the meme mania to still last anywhere between like 8 to 14 months. And so I'm not going to be celebrating anything until like early 2026. And so just encouraging everybody and myself trying as well to just like be very locked in for 2025.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in a bunch of Telegram chats. Obviously, everyone's like talking about your thesis. You've gone out there. We were talking, pre-show that we're going to try to bring up different topics and you've already covered. But I saw Ansem today on the timeline. He is very supportive, even in the Telegram chats. He likes what you're talking about. We have this tweet from Bold Leonidas here kind of encapsulating that even though, we have someone saying like, we got to stop relying on Ansems and make our own decisions. Ansem's army just joins Murad's cult. He's saying like, you're the guy. Like, I don't know. I feel like you have a very different style than him. So it's quite different, even though he's been talking about meme coins. Would you say like there's a large difference, or how do you see how Ansem's been doing for the last year versus kind of your more thesis driven style?
It's especially as of the last 6 months, I try to trade and rotate on time much less. And just my goal is to hold until at least the Q4 of 2025. That being said, I met Ansem in Singapore 3 weeks ago, and he seemed very down to earth. So I'm personally a fan. I think there's going to be a bunch of different sort of main characters or mini main characters like in the next 18 months. And I think we all just have our separate roles to play in the Memecoin Supercycle.
Yeah, so, when I first heard about you, Murad, I think you were on like Pomp's podcast in 2018, 2019 talking about Bitcoin. And then I think, you ran a fund, you created like a DeFi project, and now you've just fully embraced the speculative mania that is crypto. And now you're like full on like bullish meme coins. Like, how did that like transition? Like, how did you get here? Just if you can talk about that.
Yeah, for sure. I guess I can start a little bit earlier. While I was a student in the United States, I did a year abroad in China. That was 2013, 2014. So during that sort of the famous 2013 Bitcoin bubble, was kind of lucky to be in the right place at the right time. Had a couple of American friends that were in Beijing, like doing different like early BTC stuff. So that's how I got my early exposure. Took a little break. 2016, realized with the whole sort of Ethereum wave, 2017 in particular, that I just needed to do sort of crypto full time. 2015, 2016, I was working at commodities trading and also briefly in TradFi. But once sort of BTC did very well in 2017, I just decided to do crypto full time. And ever since then, like you said, I've been doing a bunch of different things, sort of writing, investing, trading, angel investing. Had a fund in 2019, 2020. Unfortunately, that didn't go so well. But we're back now, sort of grinding, hustling. The key is to always stand back up whenever you fall down. So here we are.
Are you running it as a fund, or is it just your own PA, or like how is it now? Because you're saying running it back. Is it still similar structure?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
As of right now, I'm only managing my own money.
Okay. I mean, I heard that you guys were doing a lot of good trades. Obviously, like there was some crazy volatility that shook a lot of people out in March 2020. But I heard from some of your like investors that you guys were doing a lot of good stuff as well. Like it seemed like, how did you feel about, were you learning, or are you still kind of like learning about risk management or about the craziness of crypto, or like how would you reflect on that period?
So we were actually outperforming BTC, which was kind of like our the thing like that we were trying to outperform. Literally up until like a week or 10 days before sort of the COVID events, right? Yeah, we were up 60% at one point, even though BTC was down, which is like relatively difficult to do. Unfortunately, my sort of long position size was a little bit too big in the 2-3 days leading up to the COVID crash. So definitely a lot of lessons learned from that. My strategy for this cycle, and probably until the rest of my life, to be honest, is to be predominantly focused on like low leverage, or in this case right now, like no leverage at all. I'm just focused on holding spot assets that I think will do best in 2025. And frankly speaking, it's a much better lifestyle, like emotionally and stress wise.
Well, the good thing about meme coins is that the amount of volatility is so high that you don't need leverage. You're already getting the vol, 200 that you want without it.
Yeah, for sure.
And I wanted to ask you about the project that you were working on before sort of this pivot to investing mostly in the meme coin space. Maybe you could share a little bit about the journey of trying to find product market fit, how difficult that is, and if that actually brought you to where you are today. For context, I'm working on a project. It's extremely hard to build things people want, right? And I think something that comes out of that as a builder is this sort of cynicism towards this space that you have to push back against. And I'm curious if like that cynicism led you to your meme coin thesis.
Actually, I'm still working on that project, and I'm going to continue to for the next 2-3 years or however long it takes. But yeah, the project is called STFX. It is kind of like DeFi/SocialFi. We originally started on Arbitrum. You could essentially, instead of having vaults dedicated to portfolios, you could have vaults dedicated to single trades. And yeah, we had over 2,000 users like in general, and right now I believe we have like 250 active users. But what we're doing right now is we're moving to Solana, which I think is going to be playing a much more major role, specifically in the context of meme coins and active trading in 2025. Especially compared to Arbitrum. And yeah, right now we're essentially finalizing our Solana integration. Hopefully should be launching late October, early November.
I've heard the strategy from a lot of founders. It's like, you can't quite get everything right and you move to Solana. It's like the meme where the guy just like patches like, move to Solana. He's just like filter save everything.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's it depends on the nature of the product, right? I guess a lot of the times just moving to Solana is kind of a meme at this point. I totally agree. In our case, though, we are building sort of these speculative vaults that are dedicated to active trading. And I mean, active trading, whether you like it or not, it has shifted from the Ethereum ecosystem to Solana this cycle. So I think in our specific case, the shift kind of like is much more reasonable.
And I think earlier you're talking about managing big positions. And speaking of that, I think this morning there was a lot of drama on CT where ZachXBT decided to dox your wallets. So it seems like Ansem, right, and like the crypto degens, they're supportive of you. It's like, oh my god, like what is Zach doing? How did you feel when you saw this? And like, are these your wallets?
So yes, those are my wallets. There's no point in hiding that. The frank truth is that if you've been deep in the Discord and Telegram trenches with other on-chain warriors and hardcore on-chain sleuths, then they've already had those wallets for the past 5-6 months. In fact, I believe this doxing is bullish because people can check every single wallet for themselves and notice that I haven't sold a single meme coin pretty much ever.
Yeah, you're diamond-handed.
Yeah.
I definitely saw the the argument where, yeah, like this actually locks supply for these coins, therefore it's bullish. But like at some point you have to sell, right? You mentioned like the 8 to 14 month target, but like what would need to happen in order for your thesis to be invalidated or for you to like just start skimming profits?
Yeah, just for the sake of transparency, I try to be as honest as I can with everything I do. I'm probably going to take some profits in Q4 of 2025. I've been very public and transparent about that on a bunch of different podcasts and videos. But until then, my goal is to just diamond hand all of my positions.
Are you worried about like a cascade of people selling when they see that in 2025 you do sell, or do you feel like there'll be such a mania like with centralized exchange listings and you can just kind of do it? Or
I'm not concerned about that at the moment. I don't plan to sell any of my positions for at least another year, or at least that's what I'm aiming to do. And yeah, like I said, it's bullish because I'm not the kind of person who is going to sell for like a 5x, 10x, 20x, or whatever. I genuinely believe in all of the thesis.
just a 20x or whatever, just a pleb 20x.
Right. Well, I genuinely believe in all of the targets and theses that I've outlined. And the only thing that this doxing proves is that I practice what I preach. So,
Do you have any concerns over the responsibility you now have in the space where like tokens that you talk about are now like how they perform is directly correlated to what you say on Twitter and at public places like a token 2049? How has that impacted you?
like I said, I've given very clear entry points, very clear targets, both in terms of price and time, very clear amounts that I own, and like the timing associated with all of these things. So I don't know what else I can do to be even more transparent. Now, pretty much everybody has most of my wallets. So yeah, there's definitely a responsibility here with the recent influx of followers. But like I said, I believe in most of my targets. I think 7 or 8 of them will definitely hit. Maybe some will disappoint. I actually think some of them will overshoot my targets, right? And I'm very much aware that a lot of CT, especially in the past couple of weeks, maybe a little bit less so today, but the majority of CT still thinks that my targets are delusional and crazy. But I wouldn't want it any other way, because if everybody agreed with me today, then that means that there's like little upside left. Like, I don't want this to be consensus. And the way I see it is 5 to 6 months from now, people will be giving targets that are even higher than mine. So the way I see it, everything is unfolding exactly as it's supposed to be unfolding, the way I have predicted so far. And like I said, I think it's going to continue for another 7 to 12 months.
Let's take one of these tokens, though, that has been maybe the most successful since you started talking about it. This is a token that has been around a long time, didn't really have much going on, then it's just completely exploded. So we're talking about S&P 6900, which is like the intention to flip the S&P 500 in like market cap, like this kind of meme. Obviously, it's done super well. Maybe we can get the chart just.
Actually, I would rather you not pull the chart, because in the SPX community, it's taboo to be posting charts. So one of our sort of slogans and mottos is there is no chart, because we believe we believe. Here's the thing, right? And I'll delve into that a little bit later. But if you guys have seen my presentation, I draw a parallel between meme coins and sort of neo-religions. I know it sounds crazy, and I understand that it sounds a little bit blasphemous. That being said, I think essentially there is a void that the disintegration of religion since the 1950s is leaving in kind of people's hearts, and different things, brands, experiences, and communities. And by the way, I don't think of meme coins as like memes. I think of them as tokenized communities first and foremost. These things are not fully, but partially replacing the product market fit that religion has lost in the West, right? And in this way, essentially, the way you need to see it is it's Darwinism. It's group Darwinism. And our idea is that organizations with a token are going to outperform organizations without a token because the financial incentives are obviously turbocharged. I'm sure you guys understand this. And one of our beliefs is that too much chart watching, too much price watching, too much chain watching and wallet watching is negative for the journey because it creates sort of local unnecessary spikes in your dopamine when instead you should be trying to be as stoic as possible for as long as possible, right? That being said, I can definitely discuss SPX 6900 and my thesis for it. This is the meme coin I'm most bullish on. My public target is 100 billion, and I believe that that is very conservative, actually. I think it can even overshoot that target. Now, the reason I'm so bullish on it is because it's already transcended the status of a meme coin, and it's already transcended the status of a cult. It's something much bigger, and I think it's going to go viral on Instagram, TikTok, Reddit, 4chan, YouTube, and everything in between. What it is it's a movement. It's a financial movement, and the way I see meme coins in general, and this one specifically does it very well, they are vessels of faith, and they are vessels of dissatisfaction. They're vessels of dissatisfaction, not only with the crypto world, which is how they started this cycle, but also with the world at large. And the way we can go into like my quant metrics, my metrics of decentralization, my metrics of distribution, but at the end of the day, it's about the people and it's about emotion. And at the end of the day, the math behind meme coins is just a mirror to the emotional side of it. And at the end of the day, in order to find the biggest outperformers that will grow to be the biggest meme coins, it boils down to what I describe as inspiration per capita, right? Because the more inspiration per capita you're going to have in a certain meme coin, the more free cult labor you're going to trigger in an average participant. And what that means is a lot of the participants in these meme coins, the holders, both big holders and small holders and everyone in between, they are like engineers, designers, influencers in real life, right? And what they would usually charge $5, $10, $15,000 in their real job, in their real life to do, they do these things for free, right? So your job as a meme coin, quote unquote, investor is to find the communities, the movements, which trigger as much free cult labor per capita as possible. And that's how you sort of have these insane network effects.
I have like two very important questions. Like one, obviously, things taken off now. So, the rocket started. Okay. Do you think that it would have done it without your attention on it? Because obviously you have been very public on this specific one that is your favorite one. And you've kind of made people aware of it. And maybe you're right that like, if you had made people aware of something else, it wouldn't have resonated. And like, so maybe like there's some factor of you and some factor of it did resonate, it's kind of both. Do you think if you hadn't talked about it, like this would inevitably still be the best cult meme and it would have taken off anyway? Because I'm like not sure if that's the case. Or
I believe it genuinely would. And the reason for that is because I made a list of 30 things that are most important in a quote unquote cult. And it ticked off 29 of them better than everyone else. And the only one thing it was missing is kind of just a small spark of attention, right? Just a small spark of any one large crypto Twitter account talking about it. And if it wasn't me, it would have been another large account 1 month from now or 2 months from now. So it's not because of me. I simply accelerated it. The way I see it is the guys in the community that have already been grinding and hustling and creating media and creating lore for a year, they loaded a tub of gunpowder and I simply was the final spark. Now, to be practical, I think the answer is like a mix of both what you said and what I said. There's definitely like components to it, but the way I see it, I'm only 25% of it in the long term, right? You saw me call 9 other coins, but they haven't done that well. The reason why this one is doing that well is not just because I called it, but because it's generally like a very inspiring and crazy idea. And what I did was I shined a little bit of light on it, and now smart people, both retail and institutional, are looking at it and being like, this is much cooler than any animal coin. This is the next evolution. This is the next step where instead of tokenizing animal pictures and cute cats, we're now tokenizing these ideas, right? And it's much more inspiring and it's much more sort of passion triggering, right?
You could say that like previous meme coins like Dogecoin or whatever were also sort of this anti-Wall Street kind of movement thing, but this one encapsulated in the actual name and so it's much more direct. But one follow-up, and we'll go to Justin. do you see yourself as like, because you also talk about like as if you're part of the cult, where you're like, oh, we don't in our community, we don't show the charts in our community. But at the same time, I hear you being a very rational investor, and you're more like, I'm making a bet on what's going to happen. I'm not like gonna get into the religion as a fanatic myself. Are you kind of both, or are you trying to put yourself in so that you can really know what it's like and you want to stay there as well? How do you see it?
So my whole thesis is that these two roles are merging. You understand? These two roles that you've just described between an investor and a believer and a participant. Essentially, everybody in the world is becoming an activist investor as far as meme coins are concerned, right? So the game theory, no pun intended, is to essentially do a little bit of all of these things. You understand? To create memes, to create media, to spread the message, to obviously like buy in DCA, and to also like be an investor, but also be the participant in the culture, right?
I want to ask Murad, I mean, and maybe push back a little. How, in your view, is this a movement? I mean, is the response we're seeing in the community we're seeing not merely just a response to number going up? And I guess I would follow on to that is like, is there still a movement if insiders and early buyers decide to sell and it goes down 95%? Like, is there still something there? Because to me, like, this is just a negative sum game where the vast, vast majority of people end up losing money and a small percentage of insiders and early adopters make money. And the second that those people make money by selling into the market and people end up losing money, this movement, as you call it, or this community dies, as we've seen happen, hundreds or thousands of times before. What would be your answer to that?
Do you think going to church is negative sum for the individual person?
I don't think that's a fair comparable. I mean, this is just a speculative bet people are buying, right? If you are to invest in a church token, and then you went to church because you own the token, like maybe we could compare the two, but I don't.
But that's exactly what it is. These things are essentially church replacers with a financialized layer on top. So there's a little bit of both of these things. To answer your first question, the reason why SPX 6900 is doing particularly well is precisely because nobody's selling, right? And the reason they're not selling is because they know, the people that have bought into the idea, they know that this is going to like 50 billion, 100 billion, and some members of the community even think it's going to like 400 billion, maybe even a trillion. Who knows? Like, I know this sounds crazy, but it doesn't matter because that's what the community believes, right? And the diamond handing, the aggregate levels of diamond handing are a function of collective belief in like future upside, right? Now, the reason why I particularly like this one and a couple of others as well is because I think this one has a higher chance than others of being a multi-cycle coin, just like Doge was. And my thesis is that, sure, 99.999% of meme coins are going to go to zero or whatever at the end of the cycle, but I think 3 or 4 of them are going to end up being multi-cycle. They're going to make higher lows and then higher highs 4 or 5 years from now again.
So maybe you could just answer, I guess the core part of my question is, why is this not a zero sum or negative sum game? The only way you can make money is if someone buys and people lose money when you sell.
That's a great question. So first things first, right? Let's discuss the non-token aspect of it. If you look at the non-token aspect of it and you agree even partially with my thesis that these are actually, and by the way, I have the exact same thesis for altcoins, by the way, right? So my thesis is that altcoins are actually not about tech and meme coins are actually not about memes. What I think they both are, I think they're both tokenized communities with a financialized layer on top. And then they essentially use like different techniques and narratives to get people to like join their cause, whatever that may be, right? And even if we ignore the money aspect of it for a second, I don't know if you've spent any times in like the group chats or the Discords or whatever, but if you are an active community member of these things, right? I actually think so the correct way to model them financially is, in Silicon Valley, there's like B2B platforms and then there's B2C platforms. What meme coins actually are, at least the best ones, they're C2C platforms. Does that make sense? They're C2C platforms. So there's emergent value being created by you finding friends, reducing your loneliness, finding some kind of a meaning, finding entertainment. A lot of these do charity together. A lot of these do universe building together, like a metaverse, early metaverse type thing. A lot of these, essentially, they're guilds in the MMORPG that is crypto. You're essentially finding friends. And to you, it might seem subjectively valueless, But I know for a fact that there are hundreds of thousands of people in these communities who find a tremendous amount of value, right? And technically speaking, if there's even a single person that is going to buy these tokens and they're never going to sell them, then that technically means it's not zero sum, right? Now, we can definitely reach a point in 2025, 2026 when these things are like overvalued, undervalued, whatever. But my whole thesis is that their value is not zero. And I think this is not priced in. I think in Q2, Q3 of next year, you're going to have like VCs and smart people and prop funds come up with valuation formulas, come up with ways to kind of figure out whether they're locally or globally undervalued, overvalued, whatever. There's going to be a lot of quants like trying to figure out theories, formulas, etc., right? But essentially what we're doing, we're combining finance, culture, and communities into this one thing. Whether you personally like it or not doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is there is demand for these things, and that's all that matters.
And just one last question before I pass it back to Jordi and Taiki. Murad, I'm curious, like, is there still a community if these things don't go up? Do people still stick around, or is the community built out of number go up?
That's exactly how you identify the best ones. You want to identify those where the price is at like a negative 70, 75% dip, but the community is sort of vibing, hanging out, hanging in spaces, creating media, creating videos, creating memes with greater intensity than ever before, right? So the less community cares about price and the more community cares about culture, genuinely, right? The better the coin. And that's actually how I made most of my picks on my list. I essentially want coins that are at least 6 months old. I want a bunch of 70% dips because those are essentially like create battle-hardened communities. Those are essentially exams, right? And I want the supply to leave like trader types, and I want the supply to go into believer hands. And that's exactly how you get these crazy moves. And the kind of move that you've seen over the past 2 or 3 weeks, you're going to be seeing a lot of them in 2025.
Let's try to play a little devil's advocate on the targets, because the targets, like you said, a lot of people think it's crazy. You know, I think so too. So one of the things I want to push back on is just the numbers that we're talking about. So I understand like the religious aspect, and you want to find the communities that are, you know, so religious or so, you know, retarded. Like you can kind of call it whatever you want to call it, but like numbers going up and they're just like, no, like it doesn't matter. I don't care. I'm cool. But, you know, 100 billion means that you've gone through 10 billion and you've gone through 20 and 50. And there's people who own, you know, 3%. Like you publicly said you have 2.8% of like this token, let's say. I get the religious aspect, but you think like you wake up one day and you look at your phone and you look at your portfolio and you got a bunch of tokens that are worth, you know, $1,000, $2,000. And then like there's this one and it says like 2,158,326,000. And you know, are you just chilling? Like, are you just kind of like, okay, I trust everybody else, like 3-3, like this kind of Olympus DAO thing. Like maybe Taiki, you have this picture of, you know, last cycle, me and Taiki did a whole thing on Olympus, and that was bringing this like religious aspect. And of course, that community, I was in that Discord and like watching, they were, you know, very passionate and very fervent, religious. But to get to the numbers you're talking about, people really have to just completely trust everybody else and ignore their, you know, like there's so much money to be taken in the liquidity pools, right?
Well, there's that aspect, but on the other side of the formula, there's also how much global demand there's going to be for this thing, right?
So obviously, like in this cycle, we haven't seen much retail come in. So I guess like your belief is that it's gonna completely change.
The retail is going to entirely be investing into meme coins. It's already happening. I'm talking closely to a bunch of apps like Moonshot and Spot and Bags and a couple of other ones that I'm aware of, that essentially meme coins are dominating retail attention already. And I still think we're in the early stages of this. There is literally zero reason for retail to be buying anything other than memes right now. Like if you look at this, the quote unquote good tech projects are launching at $10-15 billion valuations. I mean, we've already went through 2 or 3 altcoin cycles. Retail understands that the upside on, if you launch, Starkware launches at 20 billion, like your upside is not great there. You know what I mean? And even if retail are BTC believers, they know that the 2x, 3x that they have left, like quote unquote, this cycle locally, it's probably not going to change their life. So what I actually think retail is going to do, game theoretically speaking, again, a bunch of them are just going to hyper gamble, but some of them are going to like buy and hold. And you want to be buying the coins that you think they are most likely to buy and hold. And that's how you get the best risk reward meme coin investments. Does that make sense?
But the number is still, I mean, we had GME, and GME was this phenomenon. There's Netflix documentaries, everyone on the news was talking about it. And even for that coin that was getting short squeezed because, it wasn't just retail, like there were hedge funds stuck and they had to get out. I mean, so right now we're at 20. It looks like it temporarily just kind of went to like 100, bit over 100. What's the market cap here, Justin? Can you find the current market cap and we can just maybe multiply it by 6 or something?
So the market cap is 9.2 billion right now.
Okay, so it kind of like briefly, let's say, spiked to 60, and this is like the one that was the global phenomenon. Does that put in any perspective, or you still think like this is going to be much stronger than even a GME was?
It has potential to be bigger because it's decentralized and you can't print new shares, which GME has been doing a lot recently. So I think it can go much higher than that, and the global access to crypto stuff is just much more widely distributed than stocks.
And just so the audience is aware too, the predictions you gave at Token 2049, 1 trillion meme coin market cap, currently 40 billion. So the crypto market cap is about 2 trillion right now. So this is a massive increase in crypto. And then also obviously meme coins, 2 meme coins over 100 billion, 10 over 10 billion. And about 25% of the top 100 coins are meme coins with 10% meme coin dominance.
Yeah. I mean, the entirety of the first page of CoinMarketCap is meme coins already, but we can get into that as well.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
Yeah, and I feel like the arguments that you pose, I think everyone's listened to your talk. It's really convincing. I think there's a lot of one thing I realized in the past year is that there's a lot of populism in crypto where it's like, I hate the rich people, I hate the VCs, and I think that's why airdrop farming was a really big narrative. Like let's say 8 to 12 months ago, because it gave the power to retail that could farm these things. And now it's like no longer the case. But Justin, if you can share my screen, I think the financial nihilism argument makes sense. And there's a lot of people that are defending you. For example, Coldwell Schiller, with like the whole ZachXBT thing. But then Huss kind of gave this argument that, this whole reductionist argument is just a way for people to just shill like, meme coins and like, scam coins to each other. And people are calling you grifters. So like, how would you, push back against that argument that, you actually believe in this stuff and that you're not just like trying to pump things so you and your friends can just make a bunch of money?
Yeah, I mean, Haslin is yet to see the proper memetic light because from what I understand from his Twitter page, he predominantly focuses on like centralized exchange perp trading of majors. And those guys are usually the slowest to kind of buy into the meme coin narrative. And I've been discussing this with a bunch of different demographics. But ultimately, the way I see it is all of the altcoins in crypto, or at least the absolute vast majority of them since 2013, have always been meme coins. And at the very least, every single asset from Tesla down to the shittiest animal coin, they have a memetic component to some extent, right? Maybe for government bonds, it's 5%, and for animal coins, it's 99%. But there are certain sort of factors and certain premia that you can sort of put together for different asset classes. And my thesis is that, look, even if meme coins are 90% speculative, that was still the exact same case with altcoins, right? So there's no moral high ground for altcoin people. And, a lot of these altcoins are literally making $1,000 to $2,000 per day in revenue, but they're trading at $10 billion valuations. Obviously, that valuation doesn't come from like a DCF, that valuation comes from some kind of a narrative memetic type valuation, right? And meme coins are powerful because they're actually letting retail participants become wealthy for the first time in 2017, right? And I actually think just calling it all financial nihilism or degeneracy or brain rot or whatever doesn't do it justice, right? It doesn't do it justice because that's like hand wave. A lot of people who have not made any money from meme coins, frankly, they're hand waving all these things and they're trying to essentially like shit on memes. But my view is that they combine the best parts of NFTs. They combine the best parts of ICOs with the local and cheap price discovery. They combine the best parts of DAO with the decentralized labor that I mentioned. And they get rid of all of the unnecessary vaporware that we're seeing, like all the fake performance art bullshit, right? And people, especially young people in their 20s and 30s, are really resonating with this message. So whatever Hustling thinks, it doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, there's demand for these things. And if he's trading altcoins, then he's trading meme coins too, right? So there's nothing special about this.
Yeah. I mean, listeners of our show will have heard me talk for weeks and months now about, there's the product and there's the token, and they're two separate things. And when I heard you say it, I'm like, yes, this is exactly what I've been talking about for a long time now. And you put it so clearly. There were a lot of things in your speech that you gave that were spot on, and I think are a lot of the reasons why things are going in the direction where you're saying, like, yeah, all the front page is meme coins, and there is a lot of discontent. So our audience is generally like very crypto native. They're all in the weeds, a lot of whales, a lot of people kind of full time in the space. So let's kind of like dig into some of the more detailed things, because I think the general thesis, they've heard it, and there's a lot of aspects that we like. Things to push back. One is like, and this is the one that people tell me the most often that they disagree with you on. Yes, altcoins are insider games and VCs and like all this market, like all this stuff is going on. Basically, every single meme coin also has either like snipers or has insiders, cabals that own most of it, control the supply, try to get it listed on centralized exchanges, because that's, when you're on Binance, it's a different amount of users that you can reach out to. Is it not still the same game? Like, I guess Iceberg here is kind of...
Yes, I mean, you can actually study to what extent something is sniped, to what extent something is bundled, how well distributed it is, how organically distributed it is, how like fake distributed it is. You can do all of that on chain. I'm not going to bore you with the details because that's what I kind of spend a lot of my hours doing day to day. But you can see what's going on. Like, you can look into the early blocks. You can notice the bundles. You can notice the snipes. And then you can see if the sniper is still holding, if the sniper has sold. That is actually precisely why I have a huge bias for coins that are at least 7-8 months old, because you can fake a lot of things. Like the cabal can fake volume, they can fake exchange listings, they can fake marketing, but the one thing they can't fake is time. And the best case scenarios that I've noticed thus far is you find a community which has a very unique concept. And you want it to have been trading under 20 million, under 30 million for about a year, or at least for about 6 months. Usually in those cases, you have what's called a wealth transfer from early like speculators and like short-termist people to like long-term believers. And that's how you kind of find these best coins. Now, all of the concerns you raised are very much true. And the one thing that I've actually been privately advising some of the smarter VCs that are starting to look at memes, some of the institutional investors and just wealthy whales that want to dip their toes into memes is the following. Hire a quant or an on-chain sleuth to figure out how bundled something is, how truly and genuinely decentralized it is, because I don't want to name any names. I don't want to step on anyone's toes. But these meme coins, the gap between them and the gap between their fairness and decentralization and authenticity is absolutely huge.
I mean, I think we all saw like there was like Book of Meme or something, day one, and then it's like on Binance and everywhere else, and you're like, what kind of cabal shit is going on here? Like, there's clearly like some that there's something going on. It's very clear, like it's not organic.
Like I said, I don't want to name any names, but I will agree with you that if a meme coin is 1 day old and within 24 hours it gets listings on every T1, T2 exchange, there's obviously some fishy shit going on. You know what I mean? So it's organic when the listings happen 6 months in and they're gradual from T3s to T2s to T1s. That's how organic meme coins. And by the way, I just need to sort of push back on something you said a couple of episodes ago. You pointed to Popcat, and for some reason you called it a cabal coin, when everybody who's like done deep analysis of all of these coins, you will know that Popcat is the most decentralized one, right? They don't have a team. They have the most decentralized like wallet distributions across like whales, mini whales, upper middle class holders. They have some of the fastest growing retail holder growth. And just like no matter how you look at it, they don't even have a treasury, all right? No matter how you look at it, it is the single most decentralized cat coin, right? So there are cat, again, I'm not going to mention any names, but there are cat coins that are hardcore cabal, and the supply is literally concentrated in the hands of like 7-8 people, but Popcat is not one of them.
Okay. I mean, I'll say like, I'm not an expert on meme coin distributions, and a lot of it is sort of, information that gets told to me. I was told Popcat has some, big Popcat whales, but maybe you're right. It's the most decentralized. I can't speak to it. What I can speak to is though, like a couple things. So I want to like dive into like some of the details here. Like one, you're saying these things bring out the best of NFTs, and yes, like it's more liquid than NFTs. One thing that's really not similar to NFTs, when you have a collection, people who have one, even if it's a legendary one and somebody else just like a normal one, there's a sense of equality. Like we're all kind of sort of equal. Like we all have one pudgy, one ape, whatever, one punk, even if, one's a bit rarer or whatever. With meme coins, like you got people with, 5% of the supply, and you got people with like 0.00005%. That doesn't really improve the inequality that this movement is sort of against, does it?
It's actually the other way around, and I'll tell you why I believe that. With NFTs, and especially, for example, with successful NFT collections, what ends up happening, and if you study 2021, what ends up happening is you have 3,500 holders effectively evangelizing 10,000 illiquid JPEGs. But what you have with meme coins is you're going to end up having 500,000 holders all evangelizing a single coin. And actually with NFTs, with the expensive floor price, they become prohibitively expensive to low-income users or low-income investors. But with meme coins, low-income people can still participate precisely because the actual financial asset is much more liquid and because it's fungible. So actually, meme coins are much more sort of like friendly to all income classes, and they're actually much more populist and equal than NFTs are. And they're much more scalable globally as well.
Right, but the community members, like one of them is going to make, $1 million, one's going to make $10, like one's going to make 50 million. Right. It's not going to be the same as like, the floor went up or something.
Right. That being said, though, compared to, so the way, in terms of price discovery, which is what you're referencing, meme coins are more some ICOs. And if you look at 2017, you had retail have an opportunity to buy Chainlink, I think at like 20 million market cap. They had an opportunity to buy Binance coin at like 25 million, right? You know full well that these kinds of opportunities are no longer available in the tech coins, or at least very rarely. Occasionally you get something now, but for the vast majority of these things, the gains are happening in the private rounds, like in the shadows, right? And what meme coins are at least allowing, obviously somebody's going to buy cheaper, somebody's going to buy later, but at least the price discovery is more fair, and you don't have launches starting at 15 billion. In most cases, a lot of them range in like 5 million, 10 million category before they make the big move, which I think compared to the VC-backed tech coins is much more fair.
But, we talk about distribution, and I'm kind of a believer that distribution is undervalued. Like people don't realize how much distribution matters. And even with Bitcoin, I mean, you've kind of been in Bitcoin even longer than me, I think. We're like 15 years in, and we're still, occasionally seeing some super centralized, big holder that, just suddenly like dumps $1 billion because, so even 15 years in, the distribution is not great. I mean, Ethereum has it all the time. We're constantly seeing like, massive wallets that wake up suddenly and like, are kind of crushing that price, and that's many years in. Do you really think that like, because you said 6 to 8 months, it's good enough, 6 to 8 months. Is that really enough time to distribute coins where, Someone's not gonna just wake up one day and take a 20 million profit and destroy it.
The process, first of all, BTC and meme coin discussion are separate, but I'm going to answer it from the BTC angle right now. You can't have a monetization of a neo gold happen without inequality. There's capitalism, and free markets just don't work like that. Whether you like it or not, some people are going to hold more and some people are going to hold less. Like if it's a free market, it's impossible to manage it any other way, right? Like how else would you do it? Otherwise, it just would be like straight communism, right? Now, that being said, I believe BTC is going to be much more distributed like 20, 30 years from now. And by the time it becomes essentially the de facto global base money, by that time, it's going to become much more distributed than it is today. Like I said, this is the only way to sort of accept that upside volatility. It's impossible. Like that cross monetization is impossible without inequality. So there's literally nothing you can do but accept it. Now, as I'm sure you know, there have been many attempts in 2014, 2015 to like create coins that like give people equal supply, or they kind of redistribute the coins or whatever. But that's just socialism on chain. That's not how reality
I'm not talking about equal supply. I'm just saying that if you have, it's this long process. Like you said, it's going to take 20, 30 years. And if you only have 6 months, there's still going to be so many people with, 5%, 3%, 4%. And like, it just becomes a hindrance to the growth, because every time it starts to go up, somebody will hit their profit target and like take it. And sort of like you end up just bouncing off of those people. And the only way Bitcoin's going to really like blow up, we're still waiting. It's got these whales selling at 70K for months now. We just need those coins to get distributed, right? Isn't that the way forward? Like for Bitcoin, let's say. So same for any coin.
Right. Well, yes, but you will also agree that the distribution of wealth and income in the traditional financial system is also quite unequal, right? And that's with the traditional financial system having a 400-year head start. So Bitcoin is only 15 years old, and inequality in sort of holders is totally natural. It's totally natural. And with time, and you've already seen this, right, with BTC, with time, the distribution and equality will get better.
I have a question, and Justin, if you can share my screen. I think there's been a lot of discussions around, I guess, ethics and morality. Ansem did this poll, is talking about meme coins and low cap on-chain coins grifting. 56% said yes, 44% said no. So I think, you kind of mentioned it earlier where they do with Hustlin. He just trades on centralized exchanges. He doesn't get it. Do you think that the people that call meme coin, I guess, influencers, KOLs, like that talk about it, is it just cope because they don't own it? So they're like just kind of justifying to themselves that. Okay, so can you expand on like the whole cope argument?
Yeah, it is. Of course, it's cope. And the cope comes from the fact that meme coiners are making massive amounts of wealth with relatively little effort, while the centralized exchange perpetrators are leading insanely stressful lives trying to catch like local rotations in the price, right? And so people are very angry that meme coiners are becoming wealthy with relatively low effort, while they have to grind it out for 2% here, 3% there. The other thing is, I actually think his view is a little bit elitist, because he can afford to be a large centralized exchange trader. Like he can afford to be a large centralized exchange whale. But a lot of people in meme coins, they come from like middle class, lower middle class, or even lower class backgrounds, and they're just looking for a way to make it, right? So even if you take the hyper nihilistic view that this is PvP, which is not my way of looking at it, they are still purer and fairer than altcoins.
I just have to push back. I mean, you say a lot of people are making so much money on meme coins, but we know that most people that invest or purchase meme coins lose money. Don't you think that's like a little unfair to say that everyone in the meme coin space is making so much? And
okay, but how is that different from Forex trading, where 88% of people lose money as well?
Totally. I'm not saying it's any different, better, or worse, but I think to describe meme coins as this new paradigm where everyone's getting rich as a community together is a little bit.
Well, it's not a new paradigm, but at least from the asset perspective, it's a much fairer and more transparent game than what goes on with VC-backed coins, and nobody can debate that.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of hard to argue like the whole, if people are making money and whatnot, because when I was collecting questions on Twitter for this podcast, I think one person said, it's not grifting if the coin goes up, right? Because then we're actually making money. So it's kind of it's kind of path dependent. It's grifting if it goes down, but it's positive sum if it pumps. So I guess, people have to rely on your analysis that, the 10 coins you talked about is PVE and it becomes like a neo-religion.
So here's the thing, right? It's not a black and white thing. It's a spectrum. But I try to tell people that like the way to make it is to hold. The way to make every single day I discourage people from trading, rotating, timing, new launches, scalping, because I genuinely believe that your probability of success goes from like 5% to 40, 50% if you sort of focus on the PvE aspect of it, if you focus on the community building aspect of it. Now, of course, there's going to be winners and losers, but it's the exact same way in every financial market and every crypto asset class.
I wanted to ask just a question, like given, let's assume everything you're saying is true, like how do you actually feel about it? Like you have this great part in your presentation where you say we live in a speculation first, industry tech second, and you have some great examples. And I agree to some extent that's true, but is a little bit of you disappointed that it's less about the tech and building like new financial products, new innovative apps for people to use, new ways to build blockchains, new ways to build money? Like, is there not a part of you that's a little disappointed that you're now presenting a thesis that's sort of counter to that you're presenting a thesis that it's actually about these social meme coins and like currencies for communities?
So this actually takes me back to Jordy's point, which you have to isolate the product side of crypto or the technology side of crypto and the actual token asset side of crypto. And my argument is that they're effectively two separate industries, right? They're two separate things, right? No one is stopping a passionate distributed systems engineer to go and build a bridge or to go and build some kind of a platform that doesn't have a token, right? No one. If you're passionate about Web3, you can go and build the next Farcaster without a token. You know what I mean? Or the next Uniswap without a token. No one is denying that. If you're super passionate about engineering, you can go do that. However, the issue. This is my core argument, and this is probably one of the most important slides in my presentation. Right? Ready? Meme coins are not a vampire attack against crypto tech. Meme coins are a vampire attack against crypto tech tokens. That's a big difference here. You understand? So I love technology and I'm all for decentralization. I've been supporting thousands of different things in crypto since 2014. But we need to separate the tokens. We're trying to get... So here is the biggest thing that you need to understand. A lot of people that are knee-deep in altcoins or altcoin safts that are yet to launch, they tweet things like the rise of meme coins is the end of times. It means that the industry is becoming degenerate. It means that the industry is being taken over by Zoomers with brain rot. But the reality is the opposite. This is what you need to understand. The rise of meme coins is a sign that the industry is maturing because we're finally accepting these coins for what they are. The tech coins, the VC-backed coins, they're actually the fake ones. They're actually massively overvalued. Their valuations don't justify the revenue. And the 95% of their valuations are mimetic anyway. So we're essentially, the emperor has no clothes. We're taking it to the next logical stage, which is you're going to have three asset classes. You're going to have BTC, which is a store of value and the future of gold. You're going to have stable coins. You're going to have temporarily, 30 years from now, they're not going to exist. Third thing, you're going to have, with improved regulations, you're going to have coins that produce revenues, that produce cash flows, and they're going to be valued appropriately, just like modern day equities are by investment bankers. And the fourth thing, and that's the new emerging category, is these tokenized mini religions. Now, you and I can debate whether they're overvalued or undervalued, but they are coming. They are already emerging. And some of them are going to be multi-cycle, just like Doge was. So, it is a new paradigm. It's definitely a byproduct of the central banking system, but it's here to stay.
I think you speak incredibly well about these things, and that's why, your talk got more views in Vitalik. This is the stuff that people want to hear and think about and discuss. Let's dive into a couple of these things. So the neo-religion thing, I actually agree with you. I've been thinking about this, and I have some interesting follow-ons on the religion thing. I love this point. But in the religion, let's just imagine this does get to that level. what is the role of the token in this religion? Like we're talking about like so many people and like they're sharing the memes and like all this. The token is how people kind of, it's like their selling point and how they kind of got rich, incentivize them together. Once things settle down, what is the role of the token? Is it like a representation of how well our country is doing? Are we expanding? Are we not expanding? Do we need to do something? Like, have you thought about that point?
The closest metaphor and the closest parallel that I found, I think it's a church donation basket, which is two-way, right? So it's a two-way church donation basket. I think that's the closest way to reason about it right now. Because I agree with you. They're not equity, they're not debt, they're a little bit different to tech alts as well. They're not currencies. Some people model them as social currencies. I don't think so. I think what it is, at the risk of sounding spicy, they are vessels that are collecting some kind of a dissatisfaction or overall general emotion in the world. And by investing in them, you're essentially trying to make some kind of a financial statement. And that's why I'm very bullish on them, because I don't think we fully played out the story yet. And the story is yet to play out. And essentially, this is what I mean by when I say that they're essentially vessels of faith and vessels of dissatisfaction, when you're essentially voting with your money. And because a lot of people are like dissatisfied with democracy or whatever right now and different forms of governance, this is essentially a lot of these things. They are a way to make a statement in a capitalist cocoon. And by investing in that, you essentially want that idea to be pushed further in the world. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. But like, I love the idea of like, this is going to create the momentum and we're going to get to a certain market cap. I'm just trying to go past that and look at the game theory of like, what's the equilibrium? Like, is this a stable, like kind of like a Nash equilibrium where we stay there? Or is it just going to be like the Jimmy blip where, there's a candle and then like we're kind of all the way back down. And we saw, like you said, with Elon, he did try to get to that next level. We're talking about Dogecoin as being a currency and it's going to be accepted for goods. And then he's trying to make it a money in which you kind of like me. I think we're both of us not quite convinced about trying to make things pay for cars and shit like this. Like, it's a common way that people try to elevate the meme coin, but it's kind of like unclear if that can work. Maybe somebody will do it. So like that's not really clear. And then in terms of equilibrium, there has to be more to it, right? Like, I mean, you talked about how you're not that bullish on the animals. And I think the reason why you're not so bullish on the animals is because once you get to the further point, yeah, it's cute, blah, blah, blah. People buy, pop, 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 pop. But then there's not enough deeper meaning to make it a religious thing that's stable. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And one of my theories is that we are going to see a gradual transition from animals to non-animals. And the reason for that is because a lot of the non-animal stuff, for example, like Giga and SPX are my top two biggest positions. To me personally, as well as what I'm seeing in their respective communities, they inspire people and they motivate people much more than just funny animal pictures. The funny animal pictures, they are an echo of Doge and SHIB from last cycle, right? This is a more of a 50 to 100 IQ play where people are like, okay, like dogs worked last time. Let's create dogs again, or let's create cats. But the ones I'm promoting, they're trying to be something like next stage, like the future, right? And you always want to be skating where the puck is going.
So I agree. Like at some point, like these animals just get repetitive and it's sort of like not powerful enough. I recently, like this is you might find this interesting. I haven't heard you talk about this, so I want to get your reaction. I was talking to a project recently, and I actually think it's not going to be any of the above. It's going to be like an AI religion meme coin that's going to actually blow up, because all of the stuff you're talking about, people feeling under threat with like the world that it's going and they're not getting their fair share. They're also, a lot of it is around like the threat of AI, and it's going to, take away their job, like whatever it's going to make them less important in the world. And people they're trying to find ways to bet on AI. I mean, we're seeing like all these AI utility coins get bid up so hard because people just want to have exposure to this thing that maybe is going to, be the future. And this is crazy. I talked to a project that's not launched yet. They're kind of in beta. So we're going to hear about it probably in the next couple of months. And what they've essentially done is try to build a super AI that gives people tasks. And if they do the tasks, like pays them money. And so it's not a human. You can't kill it. It's just an AI. They want to build it in the middle of the ocean. So it's international waters and like has this like, nobody can touch it. And you end up having a god, like an AI god that is providing for his children with giving them tasks and then rewarding them and watching them. He's in the Discord. He's seeing what people are saying and then deciding. That to me sounds like stronger than even like, anti-Wall Street, because it's more futuristic.
For sure. That sounds very interesting. And I've also been reading about sort of AI-driven DAOs and AI-driven future corporations, where most of the decision-making is made by an autonomous body at the top. I think those will definitely exist, but I think that's a conversation more appropriate for like 6 to 8 years from now. And our specific discussion is about this current crypto cycle.
But you're already seeing like the AI stuff is, having a lot of like people want AI coins.
AI coins are meme coins for midwits. That's what's established in my sort of community among my friends. There are some of them have had success precisely because they have launched early or allowed themselves to be mined, which mimic the success of the 2013, 2014, 2015 coins. And they've done that very, very well because it's the early price appreciation that leads to community building. And that's why you have Tao have such a powerful community, because a lot of pretty much like lower middle class people became millionaires from it. And now they can quit their jobs and become full-time evangelists and promoters for this coin. Whether it's growth hacking, marketing, media, or even software engineering itself, right? That's the way I view it. That being said, I still believe, and that's a good example, right? 99% of AI coins, they're no different to alts, and they're just meme coins with more steps.
Got it. And speaking of this cycle, one of your predictions was that meme coin dominance to 10%. So in order for that to happen, then there has to be capital that comes from Bitcoin, ETH, Solana, other alts. And you mentioned that meme coins are like a vampire attack on tech tokens. But do you just expect maybe next year when more retail piles in, like the majority of their dollars are going to go into memes? Do you expect Bitcoin dominance to go down, ETH dominance to go down, Solana dominance to go down, and meme coin dominance to go up? Or do you just expect most altcoin tech tokens to just trend to like minus 80% from here, and then all that speculative fever is going to just go into meme coins?
So I think everything is going to go up in 2025 if we get a proper bull market. The question is what's going to go up more. And to answer your first question, I think the money into memes is going to go from a bunch of different places. It's going to go from BTC, ETH, and Sol. It is going to go, it's going to rotate from alts, and it's going to go directly from retail's bank accounts. And the reason I say that is because there's a large amount of platforms being built right now, and some that have already launched, which essentially allow retail to buy meme coins with one click, just with their Apple Pay, which essentially allows them to skip or at least fully abstract all of the gas stuff, chain stuff, ETH stuff, Sol stuff, right? So essentially, effectively, you're going from your like debit card or from your bank account directly into the meme. So yeah, I think money is going to come into memes from a bunch of different places. It's not going to be just like any one place. That being said, I do think that we're in the early stages of what I call tech to meme rotation, and it still has several months to go.
And I want to ask one last question about a topic that I don't think I've heard you speak too much about, so I'd love to double click on. There's this long tweet I won't bore you guys with about provenance coins or provenance coins. I will link it below. But there's this whole class of tokens that are sort of in the meme coin sphere. An example would be like Dog on Base, which is a fractionalized version of the Doge picture. And then there's other coins that are like, I would put in the accidental meme coin category. So like a project founder deployed a token, but before they deployed their very popular project, we saw a couple versions of that last cycle. What are your thoughts on these accidental meme coins? Another one is the Constitution DAO token. They were going to buy the Constitution. That meme coin has performed phenomenally well. Like, do you think about those tokens at all?
I think provenance coins are meme coins too. It's the same thing. I think they will do well, but probably not as well as some of the others. And the reason for that is because I anticipate or I speculate that the vast majority of retail, there's definitely some provenance enthusiasts out there, but I think the vast majority of retail, the vast majority of young people, they will probably not like ascribe a mental premium to provenance.
Another fun one, since we have someone who is thinking so much about meme coins, we have two coins that you don't talk about, and now you don't want to like shit on anyone's coins because it's sort of like, we don't flood anyone's bags, but let's take two of the most successful coins. So we have Bonk and we have Whiff, and they're quite different in terms of, even like one was a bear launch and one was a airdropped launch. One is kind of more aligned with Solana and maybe has like some BonkBot kind of revenue aspect. The other one is just a pure meme coin, but they've both kind of ended up in this similar price range, right? Like a couple billion type of price range. Let's just get a prediction, 1 year from now. Do you think one of them outperforms, and why? Like which aspect do you think? Because they're quite similar in a lot of ways.
I think Whiff will outperform significantly, precisely because it doesn't have a utility, which sounds crazy, but let me explain. Bonk has gradually been adding like a bunch of like DeFi features, trading features, revenue streams. And I actually think that in like late capitalist sort of inflationary economy, revenue is arguably bullish, because then you essentially like tether your potential valuation to some kind of a metric, to some kind of a like revenue success numbers, right? But with utility, it becomes purely about spirit, purely about emotion, purely about faith. And I think if you study past cycles, and by the way, not just in crypto past cycles, but just past financial markets, past tech cycles, the things that go parabolic, or the things that go craziest, or the things that like bubble up the most, they are the things that are difficult to value. So like inability, like all of this like ambivalence and all of this like debates that we're having, I think they're bullish because they don't tether anything. They don't tether a meme coin that doesn't have utility to a particular sort of like a cash flow point, right? And that's why I'm more bullish on things that don't have utility than things that do.
So is it not worth it, like for people building a project? Let's say like you're building a project, they could have a coin. Would you not want to find a way for your project's coin to get some of that power, some of that memetic power, and like add some of that meme coin element to it to bring that, instead of just have it be like a pure...
That's what all of the altcoins that have ever existed been doing already. You know what I mean? Essentially, this is what I said earlier. 85 to 90% of their like valuation and of their market cap, it was driven from that memetic power. And so here's my thesis for this cycle, right? Because meme coins have better memes than the memetic element of altcoins, meme coins are essentially stealing the memetic premia. They're stealing the speculative premia from the altcoin complex, right? So before meme coins were like super famous, let's say 2022, 2023, right? Let's say 2022, right? Before meme coins were super famous, like they're starting to be right now, all of the global retail crypto traders or crypto investors, they used altcoins as these sort of like gambling chips, trading vehicles, like volatility, like vehicles, whatever, right? But now meme coins do that so much better because like they move faster, they move more volatile, and because of that, they're stealing that excitement and they're stealing that both speculative and memetic premium away from alts. This is why like the existence of meme coins, they're essentially like a vampire attack on the memetic premia that existed in alts. And that's how I would answer your question.
It's like a little fun question. So, I'm commonly known as the mid-curve on this podcast and CT, and I often buy tokens with fundamentals, and I do okay, right? But I'm obviously not as wealthy as you. So I know that, a lot of people feel this way, right? We want to buy tech coins and whatnot. What lessons or what advice would you have for me to stop being a mid-curve and just embrace the left curve nature, or maybe the right curve nature of your thesis?
I don't think you're a mid-curve. I've actually been listening to a lot of your videos for a very long time now. I think the reality is that you've built a brand. You build a brand that is around like DeFi protocols, and that is around sort of like yield farming, tokenomics, like smart contract interactions, etc. So it would simply be weird for you to just like suddenly pivot to meme coins right now, which is totally understandable. And by the way, The way I see it is I actually think DeFi usage and DeFi volumes are going to continue to increase indefinitely. The question we're debating, though, are the tokens. And like Jordy said, like I said, the actual DeFi software and the tokens that are loosely attached to them, you know what I mean? We need to analyze them from two different lights, right? And the situation is that, unfortunately, both good and bad DeFi projects are currently collectively thrown into the same bucket as a lot of infrastructure, utility, tech alts, VC-backed alts, sex launches right now. And that's why they're not doing as well, right? But the question, I mean, arguably, they've always been overvalued if we're just using the fee generation stuff, right? I'm sure you would agree. That being said, I think eventually, like in the next 2 or 3 cycles, they're going to be trading like similar to equity based on like revenues, fee generation, maybe with some premium because they have global access or whatever, right? But ultimately, essentially, that overvaluation that they always had for the past 2 cycles, meme coins are stealing that right now. And that's why we're having a meme coin cycle.
Murad, I'm sure everyone who's been listening is kind of been paying attention because my brain is so stimulated. There's so many things to think about. You have presented just like fantastic corridors to go down and investigate and think through. I'm not 100% sure if indeed the percentage of the market that is the crypto total market and the ratio of meme coins will end up being so high. I'm sure it will have a significant part. I want to like leave listeners with one analogy that I've been thinking about that maybe you can appreciate. But like you said, most of these tokens were just giving people the chance to gamble. And I remember like 2016 when I was on Coinbase and it was like XRP and Ethereum and Litecoin and Bitcoin, 4 coins. That was it. And it was just obvious to me that people would buy the cheap one because like it just seems cheaper. So you buy the cheap one. And that's literally all that went into it. Like XRP went to, billions and billions based on like this simple idea because people just wanted to bet. That's all the options they had. And as the years go on, we have more and more options. And now there's a purity of just like, this is just the gamble part. That's kind of what the real product market fit is. It's all speculation. Like you were saying on one of the previous podcasts, most of the successful apps or all of them have been around the speculation aspect and people wanting to bet. One interesting analogy, though, is the sports betting market and the ability of that to create an economy and the ability of sports teams and athletes to monetize. There's 2 types of sports betting. There's the real sports betting where you're watching the game, you're watching the football player, the basketball player, and you're betting. And people are going crazy right now, especially in the US, like regulation is relaxed. I don't know if you looked at the numbers, but like, it's just incredible the amount of betting that is going on. And that obviously increases the salaries of the players, the value of the teams that these billionaires are buying, because it just filters down. You got the TV rights, you got the ad revenue rights from all these gambling companies, and it just filters down. In my opinion, there's a chance that you might be wrong because those things have a realness to it. Like there's a real coin, there's an eigenlayer, there's something behind it. And people are betting, but like there is an actual athlete. Compare it to like online casinos where you have like fake horse races, where it's just like a crash game or something where we can't pretend that it's real because we know it's not. Like we can't even pretend. Like basically like the thesis is, and some people believe that you might be wrong because the lack of being able to pretend that there is actually like a tech or there's a there, will alienate most of the retail. Like most retail do want to at least pretend like there's a real game and there's a real football player rather than just betting on a screen. There's like 5 cartoon horses and you have to bet on which one's going to win. And there's a market for that. Like some people just like want to bet on that.
Yeah. So I don't think there's a contradiction at all because in this case, the athletes are the community members. Does that make sense? The fundamentals are the people, right? The fundamentals are the people, even more so than the memes themselves. I actually had that I had a slide about this exact same question that you're posing right now in my presentation. I said the word meme coin is a misnomer. It's a misnomer because the memes are only 30-40% of it, 50-60% of it is actually the people and you're essentially buying into a social club. You're buying into a digital network state. You're buying into like a neo DAO, right? And whether it's an artistic component or whether it's some kind of like a collective lore universe component, it's there, right? Some people kind of get it quicker, some people get it slower, but in this case, the athletes are the community members. It's probably the loudest community members, practically speaking, but everybody is playing a role here. The other thing I'll say is, you said like there is no realness to it, but I think just because this realness is digital and it exists on social media, it exists on Twitter, it exists on Discord, Telegram, TikTok, doesn't mean that it's not real. It doesn't need to be tangible. And meme coins, what they do is they tokenize all things intangible.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very open to your idea. I'm open to both realities of the world. One where the stronger fighting is between like the Ethereum versus Solana. That also seems to get people very religious and very riled up, and a lot of people bet on each one. Versus, just like CatDog or whatever, where they can't pretend like there's a real technology behind it. So it'll be fascinating to see how it plays out, and I'm very open to all worlds. Maybe let's move to pasta of the week. Justin, you wanna kick off some pastas?
Yeah, I'll kick us off. So Jordan Peterson here tweets, "The purpose of life is finding the largest burden you can bear and bear it." And Jordan Peterson, great book, 12 Rules for Life, very applicable. I think I took some of his lessons a little too seriously. Sherlock Hoddles quote tweeted this with a chart of ETH BTC. And I think there's definitely some meaning there in bearing the largest burden you can bear, just sticking with it. But I also wanted to ask you, Murad, because we never really touched on this, and I know this isn't really your focus, but like, what are your thoughts just generally on ETH BTC and the state of Ethereum right now?
This is not my area of expertise, but my gut feel is that Solana will do slightly better in 2025. The reason I say that is because you need to go back to the origins and study how both ETH token and Sol token got their valuations. And the reason for the way I view ETH and Sol, they're essentially grand casinos where certain it's like an ecosystem of ecosystems and where certain things happen. And the reason why ETH token got monetized in the first place is because you needed to buy the ETH token in order to invest into the ICOs. So effectively, if you view Ethereum as a country, a borderless country, the ETH token becomes the currency in order, essentially becomes their unit of account and medium of exchange. And also, with all of the leftover money in people's MetaMask wallets, it effectively becomes a store of value as well. And when you add all of those store of values, it essentially gets this monetization. Then that story continued with DeFi, yield farming, and Ponzi's with 2020, 2021. But it's the same thing. You need ETH in order to participate with NFTs, in order to participate in DeFi yield farming, etc. Right? I think a same exact thing is happening with Sol right now, but with like meme coins. And whether you like hyper gambling side of meme coins or you like the more cult building side of meme coins, you still need Sol in order to participate. And that creates a natural demand for Sol as a unit of account, medium of exchange, and to some extent store of value in the country that is Solana, right? Now, I expect both the hyper gambling side of meme coins and the cult building side of meme coins to continue in 2025. The frank reality is that there's just simply going to be much more gambling on Solana than there is going to be on Ethereum in 2025 from what we're seeing right now. That's why Solana will probably outperform ETH. That being said, I think they will both go up, but I think Solana will go up a little bit more.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Heiki, you want to go?
Yeah. So, I do this meetup event in New York once a month. And 2 months ago, I did one and like 2 people showed up and I was really sad. This time around, I spent like an hour planning this and like 30 people came and it was a blast. And I was like, oh my God, like this is amazing. People came this time. People care about me. But then if you scroll down, I think the reality is that, Jordy and Justin actually paid everyone to show up. So I didn't feel like a pure loser. So I was like, oh, this is so true. So thank you, Jordy and Justin. I felt really good for like 24 hours, but they were all paid.
Anytime.
Everyone's a paid show.
I love it. Murad, did you have a pasta?
I haven't been spending that much time on Twitter over the past sort of 12 to 24 hours. So a particular pasta doesn't really come to mind right now.
What do your notifications look like right now? I mean,
so I actually used to read almost all of my replies. And like from April until like August, I used to read literally every single reply because I know it's very tedious, but there was a lot of alpha there. And the alpha came from frequency of rating, amount of rating, different unique sort of like high follower accounts rating, and also the tastefulness and the artfulness of the memes, both picture memes and video memes themselves, right? So I could kind of gauge because I was already kind of slowly growing, pre-parabolic, but like slowly growing as just like a Twitter person. I could kind of sense the approximate relative power of different meme coin communities, but also the approximate sort of IQ of their raters, right? Let's put it that way. And that gave me a decent gut feel about the how interesting and how ambitious and how passionate and how much time these guys spend on these meme coins. So it used to be a lot of alpha. Now that I've gotten another 30,000 followers, it's like the risk reward of spending time on this is becoming a little bit worse. Nevertheless, I spend a lot of time on Twitter just because like that's kind of like the town hall. That's the Amsterdam town square of the crypto. So you kind of have to do that.
How are your dopamine receptors doing, Murad? You must have so much dopamine. Like every day you wake up, it's like everyone's calling you like, meme coin Jesus. You must feel like a god, right? You look like Jesus too.
It's just the hair is purely coincidental, and it just literally came from me. I actually shaved my hair 2 years ago exactly, and then I just like didn't go to a barber at all for 2 years, and now it looks like this. But I honestly like I know it's like all jokes and stuff, but I want to encourage people to like not call me Jesus, not call me a Messiah, not call me some kind of a cult leader. Really, what I'm trying to do is just to identify what I personally subjectively think are undervalued like meme coin communities and meme coin tokens, and just kind of like spread the word about that, right? But I'm not trying to be any kind of religious leader or anything like that.
How about the roaring kitty analogy? Like, you just like the coin. Is that okay?
Yeah, I can certainly see the similarities between that, but again, like I'm not trying to be any kind of movement leader. What I am first and foremost is an investor, and I'm simply sort of, and this is what I meant when I said that the roles of a participant and the investor are being hybridized into one, and everybody essentially, at least in the meme coin game, honestly in the altcoin game as well, let's be real, but in all of this crypto altcoin complex, everybody is both a participant and an investor at the same time.
Very cool. I'll have my little pasta. It's a quick one, but I saw this and I just chuckled. There's so much controversy. You open the Twitter, it's all war fighting, and ZachXBT is going after everybody. And Newsy says, "Hey, what's Adam Cochran's take on Zach versus Murad? Whatever it is, mine is the exact opposite." Amongst all the craziness and the people arguing, I think we can all agree that maybe the opposite of Adam Cochran is the right take. So we'll wait for Adam's take.
So my take on all of this is the following, right? Both in life in general, long term, but also like intracycle where we are right now. We are switching from what people kind of semi-jokingly refer to as like PvP year 3 to a PvE year 4. And both in terms of your overall Twitter interactions, but also in terms of your like meme coin picks and community picks, I think actually like love, kindness, and wholesomeness, it will take you further than just like trying to pick fights or trying to be toxic or trying to be like PvP with others. And yeah, I think that kind of philosophy is actually like 1 + 1 = 3 type situation. And I'm just always looking for those like win-win-win type situations rather than fighting for like a small piece of the pie with others.
Yeah, and I love the win-win stuff as well. Let's end it on a question. So, I've heard you say that basically like everything is just on Solana and Ethereum for the most part because that's where like most of the money is. And the puff community has been trying to expand its wings and fly out of just the mantle money and kind of into the rest. Do you think that it's easy to do it nowadays because you do a layer 0 wrapper or one of these wrappers and you kind of fly off to another land. Do you think that Solana community would accept an ETH-based token or vice versa? Like, what are you seeing? Because you're seeing some of the tokens go both ways. or do you think it's better to just focus on Ethereum for a token that's kind of birthed there?
Yeah, so just to give you an example, what SPX 6900 has done very well is that they are on Ethereum, they are on Solana, and they are on Base. And we're potentially even, I believe the community is discussing maybe even bridging to Sui eventually, right? So my view is that you kind of want to mentally treat the different chains as centralized exchanges in and of themselves, because they're essentially distribution platforms, right? They are. And because of that, you definitely have advantages from being multi-chain. I mean, there are coins that have literally like kind of bridged themselves to like all of the 30 chains or whatever, but I think that's too much. But I think there is an inherent advantage in being like on all of the top 3, 4, 5 chains.
Well noted. Murad, we want to thank you. I'm sure this is going to be one of the most fascinating episodes we've had for listeners. Hope everybody enjoys it. Vote for Pasta of the Week. And hopefully we'll have you on again, Murad. Thank you for coming.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Take care, everybody.